Hi, this is Randy Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Randy Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now. What's happening? How are you doing? Good to see you all here. Thank you for being here. My name is Randy Randall, and you were listening to Hyphenate with me, Randy Randall. This is fun. I'm having a great guest on today, Mr. George Chen. If you do not know Mr. George Chen, he is a raconteur of many types. He's a stand-up comedian, contemporarily, meaning happening now. He has become a stand-up comedian, but I first met George many moons ago in the Bay Area as a journalist and noise musician, guitarist. I think is probably the easiest way to say that. George lived in Oakland and was friends with many of the bands that were up in the Bay Area in the early aughts. And he also booked the first No Age show in San Francisco at a place called ATA, which was kind of like a public access sort of TV studio slash screening room, I think. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe it has more to do with it was like making media, kind of making multimedia studio space that people could use, and that was really fun. That was a early days, just kind of getting stuff off the ground. So George had always kind of been up for booking shows in the Bay Area. He did a long running club called Club Sandwich that we played at a lot, or had at least played there once, and knew lots of friends who'd also played there. So kind of knew him from that world. And then he moved down to LA not too long ago, and switched it up and was throwing his hat in the ring of being a stand-up comedian. And it was one of those things you're like, oh yeah, I could see that. Totally, that makes sense. It's a very George Chen-like thing to do. But he also has a long history with zines and zine culture. He started his sort of music journey out making zines. His zine is called Zum, that he does with his sister, and kind of turned into a record label that he also does with his sister. Zum, Z-U-M. And yeah, we get into all things Zum and stand-up comedy related in this interview coming up. So I'm excited to share that with all of you. I'm also really stoked to welcome Native Instruments on as a new sponsoring partner. They have a thing called Guitar Rig 7, and it's like plug-in amps for your playing guitar directly into your DAW or interface. And I've been doing that for a while. I've been a big fan of just plugging direct into the computer whenever possible. We're usually doing it with pedals, some kind of preamp like pedals, just to give it a little bit of dirt and a little bit of space in there. But I'm excited to dig into see what Native Audio has in their Guitar Rig setup. So definitely make sure you go and check them out. It's funny, yeah. The first time I really plugged a guitar in to the board was when when No Age was making Snares Like a Haircut record. I think it was doing overdubs for that, and we were in this kind of fancier-ish sort of studio that we're using on a long weekend, and for all the fancy things they had there, I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Guitars, they had like cabs placed in like isolation booths, and thought, okay, we're going to do this whole thing. And the engineer was like, I think we've been getting a really good sound of just using these like pedals, these like preamp simulator pedals directly in. And I thought, that's impossible. There's no way it's going to sound good. It's going to sound terrible. And we tried it. I was open-minded enough to try it. And lo and behold, it actually did sound pretty good. And it's such a funny thing. I'm so used to pushing air out of speakers, and I'm sure there's lots of debate and lots of people smarter than me and more experienced with better ears than I have will, debate this thing till the end of time. But I think technology as is, has come a long way from the Line 6 pod or these kinds of early like amp simulator things. Obviously, there's crazy products out there, but but just plugging directly in, especially in the mix, there's just a lot less to translate, and getting a really good big sound. So all that to be said, I'm excited to try this native audio Guitar Rig 7 out. And yeah, I'm excited you guys are all here listening. Please send any comments, concerns, questions to hyphenate@gmail.com. It's probably the best way to get in touch with me, but you can also find me on the Instagram at Randy S. Randall. A lot of times people in the past have confused it and thought it's like Randy's Randall, like there's a possessive S, but it's really my middle initial is S. My middle name's Steven. Oh, can you do people ever shorten their middle names? Randy Steve Randall here. So yeah, Randy S. Randall on all the interwebs. Find me there if you need to tell me things. Let me know what you think of this great George Chen interview. And obviously, as is the tradition, I will be following up this episode next week with the Hyphenate Halftime with Aaron Farley. Oh my God, got marbles in my mouth. Aaron Farley and I will be discussing this interview next week. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys and get more info and more sort of a dialogue going with anybody that's listening to these things and has questions or things that you think we should cover in the Hyphenate Halftime Zone, or just other things you have questions about, like guitars, guitar rigs, plugging directly into your guitar, plugging into your guitar into your computer, anything. Plug wherever you want to know about where I plug things. Write me, hyphenate@gmail.com, and I will tell you where I plug everything in, mostly related to guitars. But that's it for now. Let's go and join my conversation with Mr. George Chen, and I will see you on the other side. Thank you. All right, Mr. George Chen, thank you so much for joining me on Hyphenate. It's a pleasure to see you. How are you doing?
Good. I'm trying to remember if the last time I saw you, last time I saw you in person was probably you guys play. I went to see you guys play at the Smell.
Okay, that sounds right.
Those are the Smell anniversary shows. But then I feel like were we both on the thing that Sam Mickens put together?
Yes.
Like the Smell, like memories of the Smell.
Mm-hmm. That was one of my first sort of podcast experiences. Is like, I like this. I could do this. This is fun.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like you, me, Dwyer, Juan, Sam. I don't remember who else was on there, but yeah.
That sounds right. Yeah. It was, I feel like there was a few other folks in there, but yeah, no, it was really a fun kind of podcast roundtable. What's his podcast called?
Mm-hmm. Good question. We love Sam Mickens.
Sam Mickens.
That's just Google Sam Mickens podcast. You'll find it.
Yeah, go listen to it there. And you, the theme of the show is being a hyphenate, and you qualify 10 times over. For people who are not familiar with the many hats that one Mr. George Chen wears, tell us about the many things you do.
Okay, well, firstly, I'm Asian American, and that's a hyphen. There's one hyphen there.
You were born a hyphen.
I was born a hyphen already. Then I did music. That's how we know each other. I did music stuff for a long time. But within that big umbrella of I did music was I did a zine. I set up shows. I played in bands. I started a record label with my sister. I became a music publicist for a few years. I worked at Alternative Tentacles with the esteemed Jello Biafra as my boss, which is always great whenever I remember one time falling asleep listening to like watching a documentary, and then I just woke up in the middle of the night because his voice came up on the documentary.
George!
It's just like a weird, very jarring thing to hear your boss in the middle of the night when you're asleep. And then I was in bands for a long time, and I kind of don't do that now, but I keep doing the record label. I started doing a podcast. And that was kind of an outgrowth of doing stand-up comedy, which I started doing, 2010-ish. And then, and then from that, I got into acting, kind of. Like I've acted in a few things. I just had a commercial this year, so that was like my big thing was the commercial. So
nice. Yeah. And this was before the strike. Or is this post?
It's before the strike. This is like, actually technically filmed in 2022.
Way before
this year. Yeah.
That is so exciting. So you moved to LA and living the dream. Stand-up comedian and actor, podcaster. Coffee shop seat warmer.
I kind of like thought I had more juice coming down here than I did, or thought I had more momentum rather.
Ooh.
It's just one of those things that you kind of discover, because like I ran like a comedy. Oh yeah, I ran a comedy venue in San Francisco.
What was that called?
That was like, it was called it was the Lost Weekend Video Cinecave, which was supposed to be like a micro cinema in the basement of a video store. And then we kind of had our showcase, which was called Cynic Cave. And then I kind of was doing all the booking for that.
And this was
space.
Sort of akin to like the Meltdown thing that Jonah Ray and Kumail Nanjiani
people do compare. I mean, Meltdown's a much bigger room. Like
Okay.
this was like, maybe the capacity should have been like 35, but we would just cram it. And it was technically illegal. Like it was like not, there was like a fire exit, but like have to be like 5'5" to get out, which I was. So continue to
no
be.
problem. But this sort of,
but it was
sorry.
No. I was going to say the other funny crossover there is, this is Lost Weekend Video is a video store that was started by Adam Fowler from Jawbreaker.
So there it is, all full circle. The music world, comedy, movie, acting world.
Movies,
I mean, what are the kind of, so I guess I was thinking it's almost like setting up a basement show, like not an unusual idea. Like, hey, you have a basement? Cool. Let's pack people in here, whether it's music or comedy or modern dance or anything you could do.
Yeah. All of the show booking, I basically kind of just was a skill transfer over to comedy booking. Like I just started doing stuff actually at ATA, which was like a space first show you played in SF was at ATA, I'm sure. Or the first No Age show at SF was ATA.
That was like a community television sort of space.
Micro cinema. Yeah. It's like Craig Baldwin, the famous underground filmmaker, Craig Baldwin, kind of his spot. And also Lost Weekend Video, because it was run, not just because it was run by Adam, but also Christy and Dave. They were all came from a music scene, like a punk scene. A ton of musicians worked there.
Oh yeah.
And so like I don't know if you know Hannah from Grass Widow. Now she does Cold Beat. She kind of had reached out to me. She's like, hey, this comic was gonna set up shows here, but he's moving away, Chris Thayer. And like, do you want to put on a show here? I'm like, yeah, sure. Because I was like, a lot of people in SF I knew, they're like, I was the only person I knew that was that was in comedy, because they just like, it was like a world of people that just like don't go to comedy clubs. So just like, oh, I know a guy, George. So I ended up doing like all these weird things in the beginning, like an art space, like an art gallery space. We did like a life drawing comedy show. So people are just drawing the comics as they did their sets.
Wow, that's like a two. Could you? Who pays who in that scenario?
Right. No one
paid anybody.
No, I think I'm trying to remember. No, I think we did it as a free entry show, I believe,
because
the comic
needs to work out the material, so they'll talk to anybody, and the people drawing need to work on. They need to have somebody in front of them for hours just so they could draw them, so you don't have to pay a model, and you don't have to pay the audience. Yeah, that's an interesting.
I've been going
that's a good one.
I've been going to life drawing classes, actually. Not classes. They're just kind of like life drawing, like afternoons, like Heavy Manners. Do you know that spot? It's where Machine Project used to be.
Yeah.
In Echo Park. They just do occasionally. They just do like a life drawing thing, like on 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon, and like kind of like led by someone. Yeah, you pay because they got to pay the models. And then you just bring your own materials, and like it's been pretty good. I've kind of like decided to. That's another thing. I am into drawing. I'm into illustration type stuff and visual art stuff from that angle, but I hadn't really done a lot of it in a while. So I kind of during 2022, I was trying to I set the goal to make a drawing a day. I did not do that, but I made at least probably 200 drawings. So
I like that. That's a fun idea. The daily drawing task. It's
hard to do anything daily, dude. Like I'm like on Duolingo now too. I'm not really keeping up with that. Yeah.
I love this. Where it's like this is the many insights. So, but okay. Well, I want to go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up, and where did this all start?
I grew up in San Jose, California. Have you played a show there ever?
Yeah, we did
Where did
Chris
you play?
Johansson set us up with a festival downtown. So we did a
01?
I can't recall what it was called. It was an outdoor stage, I
Yeah.
think, and we kind of hung out for a
that
little
might be
while.
01.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot Johansson's kind of from San Jose.
I think
isn't
so.
he?
Yeah. He said his friend was setting the
Yeah.
thing up, and he put us up for. I just recall there was a pirate band, like literal like Halloween store pirates, that that played before us, and I was like, okay, this is
Nice.
for some reason that was my San Jose impression. I was like, I'm sure the music there's more to it than that, but there was left a heavy impression on us.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't, the bands that were from the area when I was growing up, there were just, kind of just like little local San Jose bands. But there was like this scene that I kind of tapped into at some point, which is like basically it was like around this venue, the Cupertino Library. And there was this group called the Sunnyvale Music Club. And it was just like, people that wanted to do all ages shows. And at the time, it was like, early 90s. So it was this crazy circuit of like kind of ebullition bands, or like the bands that were from the area were like Mohinder, which turned into Duster eventually. The Fisticuffs Bluff I remember seeing, and that was like kind of like a pretty mind-blowing, life-changing kind of show. Nuzzle, bands like that, they were kind of around. But yeah, there was like another scene that was kind of like skater dudes.
Like the Faction, like Steve Caballero's band is from there. That was a big thing. That's what.
Yeah, Ray. I remember actually going to like, because Ray Stevens was one of the guys from the Faction. I'm almost positive, and he had a little tape label, and I was in high school, and I was just like, how do you run a label? Who does a label? And I went over to this guy's house. I don't know how because I was also volunteering at the radio station. I was like kind of trying to like just learn what everything was, which was pre-internet. Yeah, I'd say it's pre-internet. I mean, there was probably BBSs and stuff, but I didn't know how to do that stuff. But yeah, I went to Ray Stevens' house, and he was just like putting out tapes of like a local ska band, and we're just like, we love this local ska band. Actually, that was the thing. There was like, there's like Skank and Pickle.
Lest we forget, ska,
one of the biggest bands,
the biggest shadow.
Skank and Pickle, one of the biggest bands from San Jose.
Okay, yes.
Mike Park, shout out to Mike Park. Mike Park, good guy.
Yeah.
Also, they had my bandmate from 7 Year Rabbit Cycle, Mia, worked for Mike Park for years.
Oh my God.
She was like the production person there, just working in Mike's mom's garage.
Asian Man Records. Is this that Mike Park?
Asian Man Records still, oh my God, still there. What is it, 30 years old maybe?
Wow.
It's amazing. So San Jose, that's kind of giving the flavor of San Jose. Me and my sister would kind of volunteer at the San Jose State radio station. We never ever got air on the air. I would just go there and just like
entry.
When you're like when you're like in high school, someone in college feels like so wise to you. Like they have so much wisdom.
They're like,
oh my gosh,
21 years old.
They're like 20. Oh my God, they have everything figured out.
They got cool shoes. They look like they shopped at a thrift store.
Yeah. So it was kind of a weird self-education / just like trying to figure out like how to do anything, and being like, I like, and at that point I wasn't really playing music. I'm just like, I like music. I kind of want to do something with music. That was the only kind of thought.
But it was very like a DIY sort of like compulsion, or was there ever a thought of like kind of, okay, this is the road towards some kind of major label or majored type of vibe, or what was, I guess in terms of like because I know the history of kind of where the music went, but I'm just curious at that young age, was this like, okay, from college radio to MTV to this, or was it?
I wonder if I had grown up in a more industry town, maybe I would have thought of that stuff. It was like there's very little kind of like, it's really interesting, the Bay Area, because there's like, you can do a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of media there. There's a lot of, opportunities, but also it's not an industry town the way LA or Nashville or New York is. Yeah. So it was like, there was like the big radio station, like RK Rock was Live 105. And like maybe there was a show that would play like some indie bands, but like that was kind of it. So then there was like, it's college radio. I think getting introduced to college radio was like interesting because it's just like there's like a mini ecosystem. I know there's a bigger version of this, but I'm also like this. So, and then I think it was like knowing about like zine culture was our internet, right? Or like sort of like
Yeah.
alt weeklies and zines,
Underground
and those
community.
are like big.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you could kind of like just learn everything from alt weeklies, zines, and college radio.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of digging to
Yeah.
do that
But
stuff,
it
to
was-
find stuff that way.
Yeah, but the reward went, to the people who put the work in. You could find cool records that would, change your life.
I definitely like didn't. I was not, when I think back on it, I'm like, I definitely missed a lot of stuff in that time period. I'm like I'm sure there was like a Slint album around, but I didn't know it till a couple years later.
You didn't have a mixtape that had Spiderland on one side and Millions Living Will Never Die on the other side?
I did get, someone did make me a mixtape with all the Slint on it, but
Okay.
that was like in college.
Okay.
It was a little bit later.
Yeah.
So in high school, I was just kind of like, I'm a step above like liking like the Smiths and Depeche Mode and New Order. That was kind of where I was
spoken like, true DIYer, like, that entry level Smith stuff, was only available on imports, at cool record stores, like, but they were like on a major label.
I mean, this is like a time. This is definitely dating things.
Of
But you were
course.
saying
No,
the
I'm
beginning
with
of
you.
stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So,
No, it's good. But I've also wondered, does Gilman or East Bay stuff factor in, or was that another world? I mean, because obviously that would be, in my mind, if I look at that time, I would say there's some crossover there. But also, I mean, you'd have to drive, or you'd have to find some way over there.
So my sister went to Berkeley, and she's a little older than me, so she was up there, and I would go up there and hang out with her and go to like Amoeba and stuff like that. So it was sort of like an entryway, and she would tell me about stuff that she was involved in up there. Like she got involved in like the campus. It's called Berkeley. It's called ACC Superb. It was like the student board. They would put on concerts and stuff. So she got involved in that. So she kind of like told me about it. I was still in high school. Like, hey, there's this thing. Like they had like Fugazi play.
Wow.
On Sprout Plaza.
Did you go?
And so it was. No, I wasn't there for that. Like I was still in high school. So it was like the kind of thing that like I knew that was an option, or at least something I could pursue or aspire to. So there's sort of like, there were like little steps above. I'm like, I've been doing all this stuff, and it's not, I also didn't have as big of a community. Like there was sort of like, just going back to like the high school era. Oh yeah. So to back up to that, I did actually start doing my zine in high school.
And this is Zum.
And that was almost
this
like,
is the
yeah.
Zum zine,
Yeah.
ZUM.
And it was almost like, ZUM. And it was almost like I had read about what a zine was before I'd actually seen a zine. So I just kind of started to try and make one based on my idea of what I thought a zine was. And I remember like laying it out like news, because I read Newsweek.
Oh my God.
A lot. I'm like, I'd read it. I'm like there should be 3 columns. And then there's
infographics,
like little pictures,
everywhere.
like little pictures. Yeah. And there should be text. I had text on the front cover,
Amazing.
like a newspaper.
Amazing.
Like just like fucking like bizarro. Like, and I didn't really know what zines were until I started trading other people with zines. I'm like, oh, it's kind of like a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But this is why I love podcasting. It really kind of is like that zine period in terms of the purity of like, like it's just about whatever you want it to be.
Yeah,
it's just a format for delivering.
Well, I feel like we live in the age of hyper nicheism. The more detailed and the more hyper specific you can be, the more it will stand out. Because there's I mean the major stuff, the gooey center of culture has sort of become unraveled, and there's nothing really interesting happening there. So it's all the interesting stuff is way out in the corners, which I think for people like us that were sort of raised on a underground sort of culture, it's like, great, I can do this all day long. How weird do we want to get? How micro how micro do you want to get? We got shows of one or two people in the audience. That's pretty micro.
I'm like, what is a monoculture anymore? Is it sort of a good question? It's like, what is centrist culture? I think it's like NFL or something. I don't know.
I don't even know. No, I think it's the people have become the othered, the Karens, the you know what I mean? Whatever side you're on, the woke. You know what I mean? Pick your left or right side, and then whoever the other, I think, is what they would consider the monoculture now. I think that's
right. Just pick. That's very punk in its own way of just define yourself by what you're not.
exactly. Right. Yeah. Well, I think, a lot of, well, gosh, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, right? But I think a lot of what culture is now, has been taken and co-opted from an underground sort of point of view. I mean, I think a lot of the Bannon sort of stuff and this sort of 4chan turning people out onto, carrying water for some other political ideas come from, the idea of promoting, independent music or independent culture, it's got co-opted, fucked hard.
This is sort of a thing that's come up just recently in a couple conversations, just about like how Gen X were the first edgelords, right? That's kind of
ironic,
like
smirk,
Jim Goad, like kind of like this sort of like that kind of side of Gen X, like was just like sort of the prototype for like trolling. A lot of it was trolling,
right? Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole yeah. I mean, we kind of let's book our cultural underground podcast. Session there. But keeping
save that for Slate or something. Yeah.
there's something somebody but smarter than me could figure that out. But it's there. I feel it somewhere in there. Just the idea of, everyone has their own microphone. I mean, it's sort of the promise, or the guess, I'll leave it at this, but the promise of like D Boone, like go start your own band, has really come true on so many levels. You know what I mean? Everybody can start your own band, and not only that, you have your own distribution platform through these, whether it's Bandcamp or SoundCloud.
DistroKid, your sponsor. Yes, right. DistroKid.
Yeah, start your own band, start your own label, do your own life, which is great. I think that's totally the idea. But then I think we're all learning, like everybody, that if everybody has a voice and everyone's got a megaphone, then it's the louder megaphones still win. I mean, it becomes a lot of noise, which can be good and bad, and you still have these platforms and gatekeepers and all the other fucked up shit, but it becomes a lot of self-regulation too, which in self-censorship and all these kinds of things, I think that are just the nature of any kind of larger group of people eating each other.
I think the gatekeeping conversation is interesting, that I've been thinking about it a little bit, like just like how when we were like when you're in sort of the position where like you're an artist or you're trying to just get press, you're like or get in your foot in a door, and you're just like, these damn gatekeepers. And then now I feel like I'm like, it'd be nice if someone kind of kept these gates up. So yeah, well, yeah. So Zum starts as a zine, and how do you get from zine to label and to booking shows? There were a couple zines that would put out like CDs with the zine. Like I'm thinking of like Chunklet for one, Henry Owings, who still does a lot of stuff with his Chunklet brand. Cool Beans was one from the Bay Area, so it'd be like, oh, have you heard this new J Church song? It's on this Cool Beans compilation. And they're like, oh, a magazine puts out a CD, huh? And so I just kind of was like, I think for our 10th issue, we should put out a compilation. My idea was like, can we put out a 10-inch record to go with the 10th issue and have the whole format be 10 by 10?
Yeah.
And then just realize that is ridiculously expensive. So that was a process of just like hitting up bands that we liked, bands that were really kind of like a little bit out of our realm of like our personal like worlds, like we just kind of like Hail Marys, to people. But a lot of people that we kind of like interviewed for the zine or something like that. Yeah,
that's cool. Who are some of the bands?
First compilation that came with the magazine, it was like Juno 44 was probably like the biggest band that we got, and they just gave us like and this isn't the day, like you wouldn't send a file, like they just handed us like a DAT at a show, like here's a DAT from this live show we did,
cool,
and just use one of these if you want. So that's probably the biggest one from that. Strictly Ballroom, who you probably know those guys.
San Diego.
Yeah. I knew Jimmy through my old roommate in college. And so we just knew that they were a band, and they gave us a track. So it's like a lot of funny things. Like we just like got these tracks that were super long, and then we're just like, we didn't know how long a CD was, and we went to go master it, and we're like, what is mastering? We're gonna go hang out with this guy and master this thing. And he's like, yeah, you can only fit 74 minutes on a CD. We're like, oh, how much is this? You're like, it's more than that. So we had to like, like make an edit on something like in the booth. It's like,
oh my God.
Like, yeah, probably another person who is now well known is, Andy from Vetiver. Like his old band, the Raymond Break, they're on that comp. Actually, I think that's the only Raymond Break that's on anywhere digitally right now.
Wow.
Is from our comp. But yeah, so that was the first thing we did, and then the idea to do a separate CD kind of came up later. So we're just like, maybe we should just do a CD that's a CD and doesn't come with a magazine, and they'll just come out at the same time, and they'll be separate projects because this is like a big thing to undertake at the time. So,
and was the next one a compilation as well, or it was just one band's record?
No, the next thing was also a compilation, and it's kind of like I mark that just for some logistical reason. I've just decided, well, this is the anniversary of the label, so this is 98, and this compilation. At the time, my sister Yvonne was like also the music director at KSCU, which is Santa Clara's radio station. So she had like kind of like really immersed herself in like college radio world and like understanding kind of the mechanics of it and like what people wanted and how it worked. And so she's like, yeah, like our compilation actually like did pretty well when we send it to stations. We should make something that we send to a bunch of stations also. And so that's what we did for this Zum Audio Volume 2. So the first one didn't really have an actual title, but then we're just like, okay, Zum Audio Volume 2. It's a standalone CD. And it also had like this really weird packaging, which was very unique. I've not really seen anyone else use this packaging since then.
What was it?
It's just sort of like a weird like trifold thing, but it was like there was no clear plastic on anything. And it's sort of like a folding case. Like it's kind of like a DVD case in some ways, but it was still like the dimensions of a CD. So yeah, it was like a bunch of bands that are now, some which are still around, like Modest Mouse and Duster were on that compilation. So that's one thing. That's the only thing that I'm involved with that has a Wikipedia page somehow, because like someone just dug through. They're just like Duster completists or something. They're just like, we got to get this all.
There's not a George Chen Wikipedia.
Okay, so that's a interesting thing you bring up. I did for one year ask my friend to make me one for my birthday.
Oh,
and then she did.
Incredible.
And then some admin decided that it was too irrelevant, even though like at this point now I'm like, if I can't even, I have a printout of it somewhere.
Oh my
That's
God.
Literally my Wikipedia entry. We just was up for like a month or two, and then it got taken down. But at this point, I'd have this stuff to back it up in terms of like, third party resources and stuff.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Talk about
fine.
But gatekeeping again. Here we are. Back to that idea.
I know the Wikipedia gatekeepers.
Yeah, right?
Damn it.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I mean, it's probably okay, because I think I decided when I started doing acting, I'm like, I don't need people to know how old I am. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. It's not always beneficial to have misinformation about you online. I mean, it's because again, Wikipedia isn't necessarily the place of accuracy for all things.
Nah.
Again, another, but again, that thought of just like all voices, like, is it really good to have just random people like, supplanting what is truth or what is taken as verified information on, it's a scattershot. Like, are all voices at the same time?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a big metadata problem. Right. We speak of that at work sometimes, but yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So now the label is born with the second volume comp. And so you are now a label owner as well as a zine runner. And what are you doing kind of during the day for all of this stuff to sort of,
that sort of started, I was still in college when that started. And then I wouldn't say I finished college. I got done with it. And then I just was like, I got a job at like an early tech job that was like, the kind of thing you could just stumble into that people just, I don't know. I thought I fucked up my interview, everything. I had some weird tech job. It was just basically like annotating the internet. It's kind of what I've been doing my whole career, is just like describing things on the internet.
I love that.
So yeah, so I was doing that. My sister and I did it together. She had a pretty good job and was doing all this college radio stuff, so she kind of was like the person that was organized and had a plan for some stuff. My only plan actually was like early on I was like, I want to do something with this Nuzzle CD, or like there was this Nuzzle album that was out, but it was very hard to find anywhere, and it was only on vinyl. So it was like that was kind of the era where you would put out a discography of a band on CD. So I'm like, I kind of think I should do this for this band without, they were still active at the time too. So it was kind of like the thought of doing that. And that ended up taking way longer than I thought it was going to take. So then that led it to us as a stopgap thing. They're just like, do you want to put out these other two songs we have as a 7-inch from this like Stanford recording we did? So that was the first vinyl we ever did. So we had done like 2 CD compilations. And then the third thing we ever did was a 7-inch. And it was one of those 7-inches where there were 3 labels releasing it. Like we all just threw our money into it.
Yeah.
And just
that.
like
Co-release.
co-released it. Yeah.
One had the vinyl, one had the tape, one had the CD.
No, in this case, we all just chipped in to do the 7-inch.
Oh God. Okay.
But
okay, got it.
It was also a thing where like we had gotten distribution through like Sonny K, if you remember.
31G.
Some people, some might remember GSL and
GSL. Yeah.
No, it's easy. There's a lot of overlap between the 31G
Yes.
world and the GSL world, and on top of which the 3 letters number combinations. So I also kind of like worked at Bottleneck. Like I kind of would just like kind of show up and just be like, do you need help with stuff? And try to learn like what he was doing, because I didn't understand like retail, wholesale, any of that, or like how do you get these Men's Recovery Project records? Like how does that even work? I didn't understand any of the stuff. Like having him explain it to me, like he's like, yeah, there's like distributors and they do this. I'm like, oh, okay. So just learning, kind of just throwing myself into these situations where like I maybe, don't fit in entirely, but I'm like, I'm just going to try and like learn what's happening. So yeah, I had a day job. I had started playing in like a band, like in 98, I was like kind of like doing this cover band. And then like in 1999, I started this band called Boxleitner with Gabe Mindell Solomon from Yellow Swans, ended up being in Yellow Swans. And it was kind of a name that I'd had for years. I just started this joke name. I would just tell people I'm in a band. It's called Boxleitner. That's funny, right? Because it's like this, B movie actor, Bruce Boxleitner. And it was like funnier to me because we were friends with, and, there was other bands that were like hardcore bands at the time that were like called like Yaphet Kotto or Charles Bronson. So I'm just like gonna go for like this real milk toast, like super white guy, bland B movie actor, not like a tough guy or anything. So
I love that. I feel yeah. No, I think Abe Vigoda comes to mind. Your other band,
Abe Vigoda also
named after actors.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, character actors. Yeah.
So
Boxleitner was kind of my first like band that was like, I had a lot of ideas about bands and I just like threw them all into one band.
Fun.
And so that didn't last super long, but it, we played shows. It was kind of like, I think people were like waiting for me to no one was waiting for me to do a band, but it was like
everybody was waiting, George. They all knew.
No. It was like, oh, it makes sense that you would do this finally after all the other stuff you've been doing.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was a late bloomer even when I was doing it, because everyone else around me, like, I knew people that had been like fucking like touring nationally when they were like 18, so
yeah,
I felt like such a late comer to it.
That's amazing. And that, but that's interesting. That maybe that's a theme throughout things, going into.
Oh yeah, I'm a late comer. I'm a late comer to everything, actually.
But it's inevitable. And whenever it's like, oh, George is doing stand-up comedy, like, that's about time. Yeah, that's how that makes sense. Yeah. Why wasn't he doing that 10 years ago?
Fear, just weird fears.
Hey, I'm right there with you.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But there's no time like the present, right? To just rip the Band-Aid off and try something if you got it inside of you. It's
weird. Yeah, the fear has sort of returned. It's been bizarre. We can get into it later.
Yeah, all right. But maybe let's go from. So you're running a label, you're playing in bands, you're doing all this, and where does the stand-up comedy bug hit you? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I'll fill in some time in between that, because there's probably a decade in between there before I do that, which was I decided I wanted to do journalism, which was
right.
kind of an outgrowth of doing a zine. So, and my idea, I early on wrote a few things for like spin.com. And then I, try to just get freelance work at alt weeklies in the Bay Area. That was just like the SF Weekly, the East Bay Express, and the Guardian. And I'd written for all of them at some point, which you tend not to do. They were a little bit proprietary and kind of enemies with each other. So it was kind of a funny thing of like, I'm just going where I can get the work. And then at a certain point, doing that for a few years, realizing that I couldn't make a living that way. Or, I mean, if I was going to make a living that way, I had to bust my ass like way harder than I was. And like, this is like having very cheap rent in Oakland. I still was like, I can barely pay my rent doing this. I can't really pay my rent doing this. So I got a job. That's when I got that job at Alternative Tentacles, which was doing publicity, which in my mind was like, it's still music industry related. It sort of is the same skills as writing.
Yep.
So
who are some of the bands
that
Alternative Tentacles was putting out that you were doing the PR for?
In that time period, it was still, bands like Fleshies or Slim Sustenance Auto Club. Trying to think of like Akimbo. That was a big one. You probably remember Akimbo.
Sure.
Yeah. They kind of, two of them are doing a new band together now called Sand Rider.
I think Akimbo toured with Yaphet Kotto.
I'm sure they would have. And like sort of this era of bands like West Coast kind of, post like the 31G bands, or not like kind of like existing in the same world, but like Iron Lung and like Teen Cthulhu, bands like that.
And was Jello actively signing these bands, or did he kind of have a staff in place, like an A&R sort of person that was actually going to shows?
The A&R of Alternative Tentacles is Jello Biafra, and I would occasionally send him bands that I thought he should sign, and they'd be like, I like it, I don't love it. They should have a bass player. Like, that's kind of more than once. The critique is like, they need a bass player. That was like so if you want to sign Alternative Tentacles, make sure you have a bass player.
I've never heard that critique before as a two-piece guitar and drums.
Yeah, you didn't hear that? Yeah, you've definitely heard that.
I posted a picture of my 9-year-old son holding a bass yesterday, and somebody wrote, finally, Noah has a bass player. Finally, you fixed the problem, nice. Dick.
Well, you've had third wheels before. I remember like Kundo used to be like your third wheel. Yeah.
No, we've had extra members and all kinds of stuff, but I refuse to hire a bass player, much to the chagrin of Mike Watt and other people.
Yeah, you get just let Mike sit in with you sometime. He'll sit in.
We've jammed with Mike. We've jammed with Chuck Dukowski. I mean, I've played with some great bass players, but at the end of the day,
yeah.
There's a dynamic that Dean and I think can only really work with each other. I think we're both terrible band members that only the two of us can stand.
Well, you both are doing solo stuff now, which I think is good. Like, you're both kind of doing solo stuff, which I think is a good exploration.
He plays drums and sings by himself, and then I play noisy guitar with a bunch of loops. It's only what if those two things came together? Anyway,
for like 15 16 years, I don't know how long is it, 17 years, I don't know.
We're coming up on our first record is almost 20 years. We're
oh my gosh,
a few years shy. Anyway, I'm just saying, so any other good Jello stories? I'm so curious about that. That's like such a cultural sort of touch point of a person, like,
oh man, yeah, I mean, it was very strange to think about, like, just that this was my boss, like, is a voice that I've been hearing since I was like 13, just like actually like really liking his spoken word, which maybe that was like, you're asking how this bled into comedy. So I think like being around Jello in his spoken word phase, like one of the first things I had to work on was a triple CD of Jello spoken word.
Wow.
Which was hard to get. It could get some press, but it was hard to get press for. And actually, I recommended later that, like, I'm like, maybe you should do a band again. And he started doing a new band a couple years later.
What band was that?
Jello Biafra and the Guantanamo School of Medicine.
Okay.
That is that band, which is a lot of AT kind of veterans were in it, like people from like victims' family and stuff. Yeah, Jello stories. I don't know. I actually saw him last year. I kind of like, I had this comedy thing, and I was like needing someone to be like, kind of like
MC.
A foil
Oh,
or whatever to the improv bit, and I'm like, I knew he had done college for theater, and like he had done this UCB improv thing one time at ASCAT. So it's just like, would you want to do this thing? And I try to explain it to him the best I could. And he's like, I have a lot of ideas about this. I'm like, okay, that's
is that good or bad?
He really kind of just made it his own. He put his own spin on the whole thing. I'm like, this isn't really exactly what I had in mind, but okay, it'll be fun. It'll be a fun thing to do one time. So that's the last thing we kind of like worked on.
That's amazing.
Together years later. No, I mean, like, yeah, it was like I really needed like kind of the stability, I think, of the job. And like, because like I was really like trying to like piece things together, and it was really hard to do. And even at the time, it was like, it wasn't a job that paid amazingly, but it was like a step up for me. Like, yeah, like it's sometimes I find like I need a little structure. And it was also a job where you're around music all the time. You're going to shows. So sometimes they're not shows you would have chosen to go to, but you learn something and you meet a bunch of people. And like, I was still like it actually made me also feel like I could step up my own label, because when you're just around people where like that's all they're doing, then you kind of like, it's like those your peer group, and you're just like, okay, yeah, I can put out a record. It's just this. I'm just doing this version of this other thing. Also, like working on some bands where you're like, I don't love this band, then made me feel more passionate about doing something I did love. It
makes sense. Again,
yeah.
So the thing you hate can sometimes crystallize what you love, or not
strong.
hate, but
hate is strong.
Yeah, prefer your preferences.
Oh yeah, I mean like. Yeah, I mean, like when I actually ended up hanging out with, you're on Drag City, or are you your last thing on Drag City?
Yeah.
I ended up hanging out with Nicole, who was the publicist at Drag City, and it was kind of, I'm just like, I feel like you're doing things in a way that we should learn from. Like, definitely Drag City was like doing stuff. I'm like, some of these things could have been like AT things for sure.
Wow.
Like the Death reissue, that would have been like a good AT thing. That like Zolar X could have been like a Drag City thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of stuff where it's like, okay, at least in terms of the reissue stuff, like
the
interest, like Jello's like record collector interests would have definitely. I mean, also like maybe some bands like would have done better if it was on Drag City. That's definitely a possibility. But that's the olden days. Yeah.
And then so from there, and then more bands. KIT. I think,
I was doing
we
KIT.
met somewhere in the early aughts and those.
I remember meeting
days.
Yeah, I remember actually. So I knew Dean.
Mm-hmm.
I'd met Dean when he was still in Rotophone.
Okay, yeah.
Did you see Rotophone?
No.
You never saw Rotophone?
No. I knew about it. I think I was playing with them when he was still playing with them. Yeah.
Okay.
This was Baby Dean playing bass in a kind of Riot Girl band.
Dean, like we figured this out recently. The first time I ever went to the Smell, the old Smell.
Yeah.
The
North Hollywood.
North Hollywood Smell. It was with a band from Australia that we put out a record for called the Sea Scouts.
Oh, cool.
And there was this band. I'm like, there was this band. There was all these kids, and they're all excited, and they're called
Aspirin Kid.
Aspirin Kid.
Yeah.
And like it's like they named themselves after a Nation of Ulysses lyric, and it's like, oh, that was Dean's band. Figure it out. Like, oh, I met him when he was probably 17.
Amazing.
But then I met him in Rotophone, and then I remember seeing Wives at Mission Records.
That was our first tour.
With and when you were a 4-piece,
or was it Mission? It was Green Hell.
I remember it being Mission Records. I don't know. Green Hell, was that in the Bay Area? I don't know.
Wasn't that like maybe it was a record store right there? Yeah, and it had a little. Maybe that's what they called the venue part of it. I thought it was the record label.
Oh, maybe, or maybe that. I don't remember what
Records.
Other bands. Yeah. Was it Johnny X and the Grodies?
Oh, maybe that wasn't our first one. Yeah, maybe we did do Mission Record our second time.
I might be wrong.
No, we played with Johnny X and the Grodies a bunch. Yeah,
but you only did one tour with Matt in the band.
Grothman, yeah.
So Matt Grothman, tell me. And then I'll turn the tables on you.
Okay.
Like, because that's a very brief period of that, but that's the first 7-inch. Matt's on that too, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So he was just like doing noise stuff. over you guys, right?
Yeah, the idea was that he had a sampler, and we were really interested in that and kind of making noise. And I think, the early Wives formation was very influenced by Providence and Load Records and stuff that was going on there. So,
Yeah.
I think maybe there was a touch of coming out of this, as you identified, kind of post GSL sort of, the Locust sort of idea of this power violence sort of Southern California thing, then being supplanted by Load Records and the Providence Fort Thunder sort of vibe of Black Dice and Lightning Bolt and those types of ideas. So so Grothman sort of came in as a noise maker element, but he also he had he knew what a microphone was. He kind of knew how to record things, so he helped record also as kind of like having the engineer or the producer sort of in the band with you. So that was
like Mission of Burma, like Swope in Mission of Burma. That was kind of
and we were
the
still
model.
And we were still swapping instruments. The beautiful baby phase of any band where you go, okay, now you give me the bass and I'll give you the guitar, and you sit on the drums and you sing, and this guy does that, because we kind of wanted to do everything. So that was sort of that era.
Funny. Even that 7-inch cover does have a Providence feel to it, actually.
Sure, we had like nurses
like screen print
giving
style.
somebody a shot in the butt. Yeah, there was a whole. Oh yeah, I mean, we I think our influences were, for us, I seem pretty clear, but we were just really excited young people as well, I think, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really an understating like the Providence influence in that time period. Like it's
early
very
aughts.
strong.
Yeah.
It's very strong. Like I, just stumbled on a Lightning Bolt 7-inch, like not knowing what it was at all, being like, I think I'm gonna buy this. It's like splatter neon green cover, and then I'm like, it sounds like what it looks like.
Yeah.
And that was like really, and then also because it did tie into like comics world a little, like Fort Thunder. There was this kind of tie over, like. Brinkman, Ron Rigi, like Brian Ralph, that kind of world. So it was just like, oh, I kind of know what this is aesthetically, and then but it's like, oh, it's real fucking weird. The first like Load comp I heard was amazing, and like Ben is like a legend also. Great dude to talk to about all this stuff. But that really, because like in the Bay Area, it was like kind of like Black Dice and the Providence stuff. Like met with at the time, like the bands that I was hanging out with, like the Eiler set all the time.
Okay.
Who was like this, kind of twee, like, classic singer-songwriter, Phil Spector-y kind of music. But like they were friends with all these people too. So it was just like, that was the thing. Me and Paul Kosturas, we were like the guys at the Eiler set shows. We're just like, one day we just started talking about like, oh yeah, or I saw him at like a Melt Banana show. I'm you like this also. Like there, you can like both things, and then like that's a Venn diagram. Yeah. It's like we're friends with these people, but we also are like, oh, you like free jazz, you like fucking Antioch Arrow, you like Japanese noise, and then that was like kind of the birth of like Boxleitner and Total Shutdown, kind of around the same time.
Oh, cool.
So we just kind of found each other, and that became like we are our own new scene. Is what we just decided. Yeah. We are like, oh yeah, we both have Asian drummers. Like what's going on? Like so it was just like those guys I'm still tight with, like Nate Denver and Paul and those guys. Oh, yeah. And Bob Linder lives down here now. So Total Shutdown, Boxleitner, like heavy overlap, and kind of like disliked in the Bay Area. Like trolls kind of. Yeah. We were the trolls.
Yeah. I think that just
to the twee scene.
That's so much of just that young 20s energy too. It was like, hey, I'm here. Look at me. Let me poke you in the eye. Check me out.
Yeah, like Bjorn, like Eric Copeland was like, and Bjorn, weren't they? They were the Ninjas. They were like a twee band before they were Black Dice. So there was like this whole lineage of like this, the twee into like people just being into like the twee band that ended up on Gravity Records and was like doing like confrontational like power violence. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. So I want to get to comedy. Where do we go? How do we get to comedy from where we are here?
Yes. So Eric Andre, I think, is the only other person who's like the overlap of like noise to like comedy. I mean, I don't know him, but I've discovered, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy is like kind of the same cloth.
Okay.
There's a few of us that are like, there's a lot of like rock and roll people end up being in comedy. I think a lot of like drummers end up being in comedy.
How does that? But okay. Got it. Like Bill Burr, I know, played drums. Or there's that. Kind of
Todd Barry played drums. Ron Lynch plays drums. Like just weirdly, like it's kind of like you'd think lead singer is also. There's some lead singers, but like a lot of drummers end up doing it.
You know why? Do you know why that is? Timing.
Sure. Yes. Classic timing. It could be it. I don't know. But so I had wanted to do it for a long time.
Okay.
And that is basically, it was like, and I would occasionally do these weird thing where you may remember, I would just talk a lot during kit shows.
Yeah.
And I would just talk during a kit show. I'm like, let me tell you a story while I should be tuning. Right. I should be quiet and tuning.
I just broke a string. Let me talk for 5 minutes. Yeah.
It's like, okay, me and Vice Cooler being in the same band, that's a lot of talking. Yeah. Like and then 2 other people that like don't talk as much, for sure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of talking in that band.
Would you ever write bits, or would you ever come up with shtick? I mean, because Sam McPheeters had bits. They weren't necessarily comedic bits, but mostly they were. Or in his mind, I think he thought they were comedy.
Seeing Sam and seeing like Men's Recovery, like there's like these things are like Venn diagram things. Like I think Eric Andre and Men's Recovery Project kind of live in the same world to me, right? Like, seeing him do like the Patrick Henry speech, full regalia, and then these guys come out like someone's got like a high heel shoe taped to their face. I'm like, that's the Providence thing too, as I didn't realize I was kind of like a lot of bleed over the Providence thing. There was like some sort of like fourth wall breaking that I think was common to a lot of these acts. And like, I also loved Andy Kaufman, something early on, the kind of the premise of Boxleitner early on, were just like, what if like Andy Kaufman was an Antioch Arrow? That was like the premise of Boxleitner.
Wow.
We didn't really succeed in any of that, but that was kind of the idea. That was kind of conceptually, that was the idea. So, we were just wanting to kind of always do something that was like pranky, a lot of pranks. I didn't really figure out a way to integrate, because when I started doing straight up stand up, people were like, why don't you integrate music? Like, why don't you become like a guitar guy or something? I'm like, like the kind of guitar I play doesn't work as like a guitar comic. I mean, it could. I mean,
turkey
I just saw
for
Ian
me,
Svenonius last
turkey
night.
For you. turkey. Oh yeah, well, Ian could be a stand-up comedian with a guitar. He's almost.
I saw him last night. He kind of is. I'm like, okay, that's like a good. He's like someone who kind of like lives at that nexus. Yeah. But I kind of like started just like telling these rambling stories on stage, and then I did a storytelling show. And then I did like this kind of poetry open mic type thing, and so then I was just like, I know what I'm doing. I'm just gonna get up there and just say what I'm thinking, and I maybe have a couple of things I wrote out. But early stand up for me, I like wrote everything out like in a Word document, and then try to memorize it like that. I'm like, and then I realized pretty quickly like that's not the way to do that. It doesn't really. I mean, some people might do it like that. It doesn't sound natural if you do it like that. So I just wanted to do something that was a little more naturalistic, and just actually interact with the audience. Like, that's the one thing when, like, I think when people start doing bits, like they get thrown off if anyone kind of confronts their narrative. And like, I'd seen that happen with people who just like,
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Like they don't diverge from the plan.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, that feels like kind of terrible in some way. But it was more like also just, being in bands and being like, I like getting attention, but it's split up 4 ways, Just like, give me the whole pie, give me the whole attention pie.
That's amazing.
It was really just like my ego.
I'll take less money, but all the attention of less audience.
More money,
less
more money, Randy. More Randy. You don't, Randy. My band's made no money.
Oh, okay.
Like I made more money doing open mics where I didn't pay to go up than I did paying for practice space.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right, it's a negative economy.
The overhead,
the overhead of being in a band and having to have equipment or buy guitar strings. Or that cost you more to be in a band than it would to pay for an hour of stage time or 10 minutes of stage time. Sorry,
Kit like maybe broke even by the end of Kit. We might have broken even. Most tours, we were such. Oh my god, we would just. Here the issue was like we would like rent a car for every tour.
Yeah.
We're like, why don't we just take? None of us have a working car?
No.
None of us had a working car.
Well,
if we had a car, maybe we could. I'm like, what did XBXRX? Oh, they always had Ed was in XBXRX and he had a van. So it's like
I'm
someone
not against. I'm not against the
van.
renting of the car because I think it also just
because wear and tear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you did have a car that barely worked after that, by the end of the tour, it would not work because you'd have put so many miles on it. You'd need new whatever tires or new starter, new battery, new window after you got broken into at that show. And
I mean, what the listeners may not know, Randy, is that you and I have shared a lot of bills together in different formations, but mostly me being in Kit.
Yes.
Yeah. And
well, we put out was that the Second Wives 7-inch was the split release with Kit, right?
Split 7-inch. Yeah. All of our songs are untitled. We don't even know what the titles are. But yeah, like we were such like a hard luck band. It was like me, Christy Gishwatner and the Touchdowns.
Yeah.
And
little
like
pocket
just
knife.
The most like neurotic and like a lot of neuroses, a lot of anxiety, a lot of like, scatteredness, a lot of ADHD. And like, so we're just like, we would rent the car and be like, do you want the insurance? It's going to make it twice as much. And we just be like, knowing us, we need the insurance.
Yes.
Like something's going to happen. And like, that was like one of the things I'm like, damn, if we like had just bought a beater car and like let it just like, disintegrate, we probably could have like made some money on tour. But anyway, that's a lot of Kit stories, but we don't need to get that far into it. But
But so the idea, so the draw was there. You want to be a stand-up comedian, and you start hosting these shows, kind of in the DIY sort of format, because you've gotten comfortable booking shows. I think that's I think it's funny when we're talking about hyphenates, like just sort of any sort of background. It almost goes without saying. Like when I think about this hyphenate idea, it's like if you've ever played in a DIY punk band, you've worn 10 hats. You've booked shows. You've put out records. You've done the artwork. You've done
small business.
Run a small business. And none of it makes any money, but again, you've done all these things and that's just because no one else would do it. It's almost out of necessity. Right. And you kind of learn like what you like about those things and what you don't like about any one of those things. But
and like I was
you do a million things.
Sort of like, and then also working at record labels, I don't love doing this kind of admin work, but it has fallen to me many times. Anything other than bookkeeping. Okay. I've like kind of done production stuff. I've done like a fair amount of digital stuff. I just like I don't do bookkeeping. Oh my God. That's the one thing I don't do. But I've been broke press releases.
I've been broke for so long. That's why I learned to kind of just keep good accounting just from having such little money. Like we're trying to manage, trying to make $100 last for a month. There's a bookkeeping element of that. Like, okay, I can only spend 50 cents today. I cannot
being in a band with Steve Touchton is like you have a bookkeeper.
Oh, so he took that. Like, there's usually one of those in the band who's someone who's
you gotta have one of those
scared
guys,
enough about being broke that they'll watch every penny for you. So with the early stand-up stuff, did you try? Was there a music angle for it? Was your point of view? Obviously, all comedians have to have a point of view of some sort, right? Yeah. Did you try to come at it from I'm the music comedian guy, or did you find like a schism, or there's just better like let's just draw a line under one and draw a line under the other, where I'm going to do one thing beginning fresh because no one knew you necessarily from that.
Yeah, I didn't really. Because like I sort of started doing it was more like storytelling, and then occasionally it'd be a story about like a music thing. Like I had this story early on about that sort of involved Juice Box, so I would tell that story. But the music angle of it was not. I was just sort of like my connections and just being in the Bay Area. It was actually like this really interesting thing because I'd been in the Bay Area forever, and like I'd sort of like I'm like I think I've met all the music people that I'm gonna meet now. And then I basically found a new scene that kind of made me feel like, oh, I'm rediscovering stuff about where I live, and like going to places I wouldn't go. Like I'll go to an open mic in San Jose. I'll go to like, I'll do a show in like Pleasanton, like just stuff that I wouldn't do when I was and they opened me up in a lot of ways. And like, was not that many people overlapped or knew me from the other world that I was in. Or like, or even had it was fine that people didn't have the same music taste as me. I mean, like, I kind of figured that would be the case, but they would be like, we love like the OCs. I'm like, okay, well, I know them. Yeah. Like, like that's the kind of thing that would come up sometimes. Oh yeah. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't like, like it was a skill sets. I would sort of, when I started, I'm like, oh, this is sort of like if you had gone to a community college and then you transferred to another college and like all your credits kind of transferred over.
Your comfortability on
That's
stage.
kind of how it felt.
You didn't feel bad about holding a mic.
Yeah.
You could hold a mic. You could stand
No,
on
I
stage.
didn't feel bad about that. I didn't have that anxiety. It just took me longer to actually figure out how to write jokes because I was maybe overconfident. And like, it was like, I think to start, you have to be overconfident. Like if you let the fear get to you, you wouldn't get very far with it. But also, it's like, then also the open mic scene, you probably heard that the open mic scene is notoriously pretty rough. But I'm like, you know what? I've played
Word
like
on the
noise
street.
shows too.
What do you mean by rough? Like just as in no one comes, or it's competitive? It's cutthroat.
Competitive people aren't really listening to you. They're just thinking about themselves before they're about to go up. There's not really
because the audience
members.
The audience of an open mic is other comedians waiting to
other
go
comics.
Up. Yeah, so it's a bunch of
99% of the time.
Because who else would go to an open mic if you're not?
Who would watch this?
Yeah,
who would watch this? And then also like it's true there is like a lot of misogyny, a lot of homophobia, a lot of like racism, like a lot of stuff that like is like people just figuring things out, but like also just
in the content,
a lot of people that are
on the content or the actual people and their like actions, or is it just hacky
the content?
Jokes?
I mean,
just shitty joke.
Well, no, I mean there's
actual people being shitty too.
There's people being shitty in every scene,
of course,
as we've learned, every scene. Yeah. So it's just like a parallel thing of that, and just like learning, like stay away from this person. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know, that kind of thing, But also I did think like early on, like when the punk scene of Oakland is, not super, lighthearted. Mm-hmm. So like I would, try to like do like, I'm going to do a set at this anarchist thing and it just kind of crickets and like, okay, well, thought they'd love this Red Hot Chili Peppers joke. I don't know why that didn't work, like that kind of thing. Yeah. So like I've done so many of those where I'm like, I think people that used to like me don't like me anymore. Possibly, I don't know. Oh, no. It's possible.
Well, that reminds me of like a Neil Hamburger. I feel like is another great nexus of the music kind of comedy world.
I was just reading an interview that he had done a while ago, and he kind of explained the whole thing of like how all those were like. He just recorded them at home and just put in all the audience sounds. and then someone's just like, do you want to do this live? He's like, I guess I have to learn how to do this live.
Oh no. From those recordings getting passed around. There weren't even records he was releasing, right? It was just,
there was like a character that he started as a prank call character. And then it just turned into like him, like just making these art piece records about a bad comic. And then he's actually really fucking funny. So he figured it out. But like, I think it was a whole persona experience. But like also Bay Area guy. He is a Bay Area guy for a long time too.
All right, those prank phone calls still top 10 of all comedy records with like Longmont Potion Castle, but again, I think stuff that would get passed around by bands on tour too, right? Like Heavy Metal Parking Lot, these kinds of things, these sort of stand-up things that were music, not necessarily music centered, but were relatable to bands or had some kind of thing like that and get passed around on tour.
Would you listen to stand-up on tour? Like stand-up albums?
If it was, not blanketly, yes, but I mean, if it was something like a Neil Hamburger or the Longmont things, if it had particular bona fides of weirdness that was just deranged and surreal enough, that was particularly of course we had those things memorized.
Or like I remember being on a trip with like 7 Year Rabbit Cycle and I made them listen to like a David Cross album I'd bought. I'm like, we're gonna listen to David Cross album. And it's just like it wasn't that fun. It's just like him talking about Iraq War a lot. It was like it's kind of a bummer. I'm like, okay, like everyone has like different thing. Like, and that's a band with a lot of people, so a lot of opinions.
Yes, it's hard to find something that's I think the prank phone call side of things can just kind of, it's a little bit more universal. Or or esoteric, or just as long as if it got weird with the delay pedal, like Longmont, that was just easy,
Actually, now remember doing this trip with Kit when we went to go record. We recorded with Phil Elverum
Mm-hmm.
up in Anacortes, Washington. And I had like taken a bunch of podcasts that I liked and like burned them to a CDR. Like you could burn MP3s on a CDR. Yeah. So we just like were listening to like podcasts that burned to a CDR.
Wow.
On the drive, and like Doug Loves Movies or something like that. And just forcing those guys to listen to like what I wanted to.
God.
I'm like, I'm driving, we're listening to these podcasts I burned to a CDR.
Yeah. If anybody's listening to this on a burned CD in their car, please write in. Please let me know. I want to know who is doing
Send
that.
him mail. Send him physical mail.
Yes. Please send me your zine and your cassette, all the labels.
Send me your Tumblr. Yeah.
Yes. I want to read your Blogspot updates on those things. I want to get all your tour dates on your Blogspot. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. No, I think podcasts are very. My favorite Jack from Future Music down here. You know, he broke down the Yeah podcast that Jonathan was doing because Jonathan worked at the thing. I don't know if you know those guys, Seth and Jonathan.
I don't know if I know.
But anyway, it was early days of podcasting, and he broke it down. I think I've told the story before on here, but he was like, podcasts are for people that don't have friends, but they want to feel like they're hanging out with friends. And it just hit me so hard, and I think it actually made me like podcasts more because I found in my life as I became a dad and my hours shifted. I did not, and my jobs shifted. I did not have as much time talking shit with other friends behind the counter of a record store or a video store or going out at night and just talking shit with friends and making each other laugh and saying terrible things and hearing interesting subjects they had read or a book, anything. I was like, I wasn't reading books, as I got older. It's just my time was so fractured and my social life just kind of diminished. Ergo, the perfect void for podcasts of, funny people telling bad stories and bad jokes that just made me feel like,
parasocial.
Parasocial. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I definitely felt that way. Like I remember being on like the kind of the first Europe tour I ever did and just being like, like sleeping on a houseboat, like that was like not a hostel on a houseboat or whatever, and being like, I'm listening to Mark Maron, I'm just like, I am an American. I'm such an American. I'm just feeling it, deep in my bones.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is what an American does.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Like describe 2010 without telling me it's 2010.
Yeah, that's exactly on a houseboat in Ghent.
Yes. Yeah. That should be a good segment. Okay. Describe this year for me without telling me that year. How detailed can we get? So comedy. So you're starting from the scratch again, from the bottom, and you make you make the journey to LA, and I get what you mean about sort of riding the wave of DIY sort of notoriety that you had in the Bay Area of setting up shows and doing things. You land in LA, and where do you go from there? What's the first sort of steps? Taking it in.
Well,
you go to the comedy store.
Job.
You put your name on the list. You sign up. You get a doorman job at the comedy store.
I've done that once. Yeah. I've only ever done that like one time, and then I didn't. I'm like, it's the parking by the comedy store is atrocious, and there's like so many comics.
Yeah.
And I don't hang out too much at the comedy store. I've never actually seen a show at the comedy store.
So who are your guys?
Occasionally.
Who are your guys?
Well, there's Randy Randall, Dean Spunt,
that's where your comedy career is.
No. I don't know. Yeah, like I started a show right away at the old Machine Project in the basement, and they had this beautiful theater. And then like pretty much like I think 4 or 5 months after I moved here, they're just like, Machine Project's ending. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, we kind of like had a version of what I had in San Francisco, and then I went away immediately. And then I was doing shows out on the West Side at Giant Robot. Actually, like I'd say like, when COVID started, I was running 2 monthly shows and a weekly open mic. So I was at least like on stage a lot. I wasn't necessarily writing as much as I'd like, but I was, I would say I was still like very much involved. And then basically the moment COVID happens, it's like, oh, let's try doing Instagram live show, which is fucking terrible. The way that, if you don't have a good system for it, because it was basically like I'd set up a feed and then there'd be someone doing stand up. And then I'm like, I'm just I just have a little card with their name and I'm not laughing. So they're just kind of doing their jokes into the void. But I'm like, I'm not, am I supposed to? I don't think I'm supposed to laugh when they're, because it's just the two, there's no audience. It's just the audience is just, there's no feedback.
Right.
And that's like very like important. So even Zoom comedy is better than Instagram live comedy is what we learned. And actually then like the show that I had always worked on I started in the Bay Area called Talkies. That was always like a character weirdo, like variety. It is an alt show basically. And it's like, you know, the DNA of that show is Ron Lynch's Tomorrow show and like Holy Fuck. You must have gone to Holy Fuck, right?
No, I know the band.
Oh
no, what is Holy
no?
Fuck?
Well, the Holy Fuck was what's that movie theater that's right by the Smell, like across the parking lot from the Smell?
Oh, the Pan Pacific movie theater, Pan Pacific.
Yeah, whatever that theater is. They would just do that every Tuesday. They would just pack it with comics.
Oh, wow.
It was like Dave Ross and Jeff Wattenhofer ran this show, and it was like an event. And it was like I got to do it maybe 3 times or something, but it was like a big fucking deal. The show Holy Fuck was like a big deal in LA comedy. But anyway, like they would always show weird shorts and stuff. So I'm like, oh, we should just do a show like that because I did it at ATA, which was like a micro cinema in San Francisco. So like, let's use the screen. I started the show with Anna Saragina. And so yeah, Talkies turned into a Zoom show. They kept it going when I moved down here. And then when it turned into a Zoom show, I was like, oh, I guess I could still be involved because it's Zoom. I don't have to be, we're doing Zoom, right? We'll do booking and promotion and just get people to come to Zoom. And it became this pretty good anchor for like me to do creative stuff during COVID. And it's like, so a lot of people doing character stuff or music stuff. And I started doing, like I did a puppet thing. I did a whole PowerPoint where I'm playing chess against a chess robot. I did this thing that is kind of one of my top favorite things to do, but also is super complicated, but you will like this, Randy, I think. I have this character that's basically Edward Scissorhands, but he has microphones for hands.
That's great.
So I've done it, and it's like people are like, "Oh, this is terrifying," but it's also like you're like a Japanese horror movie ghost with like ASMR. That's
and they're all plugged in, and there's clinking.
They're
and
all
clanking.
plugged in.
Oh god, yes.
They're clicking and clanking, and then I figured out how to like.
It's a noise show, / character piece.
It's
yeah.
Technically the most personal thing that I do in comedy. It is it is Boxleitner, but manifest as an alt comedy character.
What's the character's name? What is this called?
Mike Hans.
Mike Hans. Oh god. Yes.
Mike Hans. Yes.
That's great.
So that's the kind of thing I would develop.
But you hold
Zoom.
a microphone to talk into though, right? You don't talk into your hands.
No, his hands are made of.
I know.
No, his hands are made.
I know, but
he only has microphones.
Yes, I know, but
I have them tucked in my sleeves. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
I try to have like suspenders on top of everything, and I don't do wireless mics.
No,
because I haven't figured out how to do it with wireless mics. So I'm running fucking wires.
You have 10
into
wires
my
in your shirt. Okay, but
I have a bunch of wires in my shirts.
I guess it's a visual thing. But are you talking into your hands or no? I would expect that person to have the.
I don't talk.
Oh, you don't talk. Oh,
Mike Hans does not talk.
Oh.
That is the tragedy of Mike Hans.
Oh, no.
Much like Edward Scissorhands cannot touch.
Oh.
Mike Hans cannot speak.
Oh God. Okay.
So it's a bit where I'm like, I don't speak. And it's kind of like fits in with like there's a kind of a clown wave happening in LA.
No, I don't know this.
Are you aware of the clown wave? Has that hit Sunland Dahunga yet?
I don't think so.
Are there not clowns on every corner in Sunland Dahunga?
No. Lord, no.
No,
not
clowning
yet.
is big now.
Oh God.
Oh, wait till clowning hits.
The YMCA
clowning and indie
scene?
rock music are gonna.
Oh,
yeah, indie rock and clowning have to combine at some point.
Who would be the one? Is this...
Honestly, actually, when I saw Crack Cloud, they kind of had like a juggalo dancer.
Okay.
So maybe that's like a good. I mean, there's like so much going on stage. Do you know that band Crack Cloud?
No.
Check them out. They're
Okay.
from Canada. They're really good. It's like really. It's like, a weird post-punk group with like 8 people in it. It's one of those. It's almost like Talking Heads or something.
So we got record label, we got writing, we got journalism, we got stand-up comedy, and Zum, your record label, your zine turned record label has a big anniversary coming up, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
We are technically 25 years, started in we started really putting out standalone records in 1998, 25 years ago, which is bonkers. I have a brother and sister that were born in 1997, so it's a trip. Yeah, it's slightly younger than them. Yeah, so I booked a couple of shows. Oh, I put out a compilation. I sent you the compilation, and it's on CD, which I never thought I would do another CD, but I'm like, I can't do this on vinyl, and I tried doing a digital only release. So the one thing about CDs also is that you can get them played on the radio. So, I really kind of wanted to go back to that as the origin of why we put out that CD in the first place. So I did a compilation CD, a couple shows. Everyone who's been on a Zum compilation CD or done a Zum release, it's not everyone. That would be a long festival. No, I mean, but everyone who's playing these events is either on this new comp or has been a official release. But the shows are December 2nd at the Stork Club in Oakland, and that's with Growing, and I saw them in January, and they're on this new compilation, and I had put out a CD with them like in 2005. So they're coming out and playing the Bay Area for the first time in like 13 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I may have played I didn't play their last show with them in San Francisco, but we played one of their last shows in the Bay Area when I was in Chen Santa Maria. So Growing's playing that. Somnambulists, which is my friend Warren, who lives in New York, but also is an old college buddy of mine who does you would like it. I think
I love that
maybe
record. You sent me the link.
Kind of like Tom Cartery. Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. It's like very like Tom Cartery, yeah, gorgeous guitar stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he's coming out. Last time he played in LA was with me 12 years ago. So he's going to come play the Bay Area and LA. And then My Heart an Inverted Flame, which is Andy Connors from A Minor Forest and Aquarius Records and Common Eider King Eider. And it's his duo. It's drums and synth with Mark Cate, who is a synth player in the Bay Area. This is only their second and third shows ever. Their first show they played last year. It was also the Zum showcase for Noise Pop. And then also for the Oakland show, Marshall Trammell, who I don't know if you know Marshall, but he's playing with Paul Kosturis. Marshall was in this group called Black Spirituals with Zach Watkins, and they were great. And he is now in a group with John Dietrich and Raven Chacon called White People Killed Them. And he does solo stuff as music research strategies, just like amazing, sick percussionist. He tours a lot with Aaron Turner. They've done collab stuff together. Yeah, Marshall's like kind of blown up the last couple of years as like a solo artist. So yeah, he's an amazing percussionist. Him and Paul did this duo together, and I put that on the compilation. So like, you guys want to do this again? That'd be great if you would do this special thing for this 25th anniversary show. So that's December 2nd in Oakland, and then December 3rd at The Smell, where I know almost everyone I know in LA. I know from The Smell. Mm-hmm. Like 80%. The people I'll run into someone, they'll be like, did you used to play in Kit? I'm like, yeah. This is very random.
That's a good question.
December 3rd.
Do you ever get recognized what in the comic scene? Do people ever, or is there
no, this was not at a comedy show. This is just at a bar.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, very rarely. I don't think anyone has.
Got it.
December 3rd is actually my actual birthday.
Oh,
so it'll be the
exciting.
label birthday. It'll be my actual birthday at The Smell, which is going to be only 3 bands, because Jim's like, we only do 3-band shows now. I'm like, that's not true. It's strictly, but it's going to be Bromptreb. Do you know Bromptreb?
No, I was reading about him in the thing you sent over. It sounded cool.
Neil Young. He lives in Pedro now, and he does something with Watt, and he's doing something with Watt. He does this is a solo project. He used to be in Fat Worm of Error.
Okay.
If you remember that band.
Yep.
From Massachusetts. Love Fat Worm of Error. Love Bombtrap. He was on the compilation I put out in 2006. So, and now he lives on the West Coast. So, and it's just really good, like weird, also kind of like physical comedy / experimental synth. So that's Bombtrap. And then also Somnambulists and My Heart an Inverted Flame are playing that show. And that'll be My Heart an Inverted Flame's first show in LA. So DJ Romy, I don't know if you must know Romy Hoffman from Agender.
Yes, of course.
Is going to be DJing.
Great.
So, and I think we're going to try to have some food there. Still figuring the food part out, but it'll be a Sunday at the Smell, and we're try to have some food, and I'll have merch. I'll have 25 years worth of records and some new T-shirts and whatnot.
That's exciting.
And I think
I'll be there.
Trying to do a poster.
Yeah. December 3rd.
Great to have you there.
Yeah.
December 3rd there. So yeah, those are all in the link tree, or actually go to the website, zumonline.com. That's my stuff. That's
where
the
do
main
where do
thing.
people find you for comedy stuff? Where do you want people to find you there?
I used to still, I'm still on X, I guess, but I don't want to drive people there. It's not a good place to be. Yeah, I have an EP that I had put out myself, and then done another version of it with Death Bomb Arc. So that's on streaming. So if you look up George Chen on streaming, you'll find me and some Taiwanese video game score guy, I think.
That's not you.
No, it's not me. You also find the mayor of Torrance. That's not me either. Or it is me. Let's just say that's my day job. I'm the mayor of Torrance. You heard it here first.
Yeah. This would be a fun this would be a fun idea for a character, just all the characters that also have your name, and you come out there like, I don't know why I'm here at a comedy show. I was my press secretary told me I had an event linked here. I am the mayor of Torrance. This is not really any comedy.
Does anyone have any zoning issues they want to go over? Do you want to talk about this traffic light?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it could just be all the other the George Chens I'm not. This could be a whole album.
There's some dark ones. There's some dark ones that I'm not. I'd say look me up there. I started doing more writing stuff again. Oh yeah, I do have a link. Actually, my Twitter bio is all probably linking back to the Zum website right now, with the Zum link tree. But I also did make like a website where it's like some of my acting stuff and writing stuff as well.
That's cool.
I'll just change my bio. Just go to find my Instagram, George the Chen at Instagram. That's probably the safest.
There we go. George
I'm on
the
Blue
Chen.
Sky, but
how's that?
I don't know. That hasn't really done much so far. I mean, it's Zum Audio on Blue Sky if you're on Blue Sky.
Cool.
So I got an invite to Blue Sky.
I think you're still on my
bragging.
I think you're still on my Friendster top 9 friends. I don't know what it was.
Honestly, bring it back. Bring back
Right?
Friendster. It's not just for the Philippines anymore.
That's a good tagline. You could do branding for that. I'm still stuck on this idea of the people you're not. Or if you were to book other stand-up comedians, but they had to go up on stage and do a set as the characters who have the same name, but you know what I mean, but are not them. You know what I mean? So everybody has to look up the other people with their names and see what they do, and then you just come up with a whole character about that other person. That'd be great.
Randy,
fun. Can we book that?
From your mouth to God's ear, and I'm God in this scenario.
Let's book that at the Smell. We'll do a night like that at the Smell. Stand up.
Oh no,
is there stand up comedy at the Smell? Will Jim allow that, or no? Is it too much for him?
Randy, the last thing I did at the Smell was I was supposed to kind of MC, and I just made it this elaborate bit that I pulled Jim into.
Oh wow!
I don't think he liked it. I was a caricature artist. I was a caricature artist, and I was drawing Jim on stage. That was the bit.
And he was offended.
He wasn't offended, but
he wasn't happy.
He was kind of smirking while it was happening, but we have not talked about it since then.
So no comedy at the Smell. All right.
It could be. I mean, I don't think there's a rule not to. I mean, it's got to be it's all ages, right? I don't know. Someone could do it. I bet someone.
All ages comedy? Is that an issue? All ages comedy?
I mean,
that's an interesting idea.
There's probably stuff you don't want to say in front of like a 15-year-old. I don't know. I mean,
right.
I feel like the last show I saw you guys, Linda's were on the show, right? I want to say that's true.
I don't know. At the Smell?
At the Smell?
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe not. It might have been the next night.
Yeah. Oh yeah. With the anniversary thing or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It was they were with clipping, and I'm like, clipping is not PG-13. Clipping. There's some gnarly. There's some gnarly stuff in there. I wouldn't want a Linda listening to the clip, but they were there. They enjoyed it, so it's all good.
Yeah. That's a funny one. But also, I'd be more afraid that I wouldn't be able to make kids laugh as a stand-up comedian. You know what I mean? It'd be more the feeling of like, not that I'm afraid I'm gonna like bum them out or that I'm gonna offend them, but just more that like whatever the humor you write for.
What's funny to them?
Yeah, you sort of have humor for yourself, and then just sort of that like what's the joke that'll cross over for parents and for kids.
How old is your kid?
9 and 4. I have 2.
Okay, so
Yeah.
2 young. Not they. Or will you let them go to the smell? Will you take them?
Oh,
to
I've
the
already
smell
taken
when
them.
they're
Yeah,
like 12.
They've already taken
They've
them.
already been.
Yeah. They're very tired. The show starts still so late, even with 3 bands. We didn't go on till midnight, and it was.
It was to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember being at a show like Becky Stark played like first. So
I think that was the show.
Kids
that
there.
was the show.
Was
we
that
played.
the show?
Yeah.
That was that show. That was the show with Becky Stark.
Her
That's
daughter
what it was.
came.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And her daughter was up front, like pointing at her wrist,
Gotta go.
like
Bedtime,
time
Mom.
to go,
Bedtime.
time to go.
Yeah, no, my
Classics.
9-year-old came and he just started playing trumpet, and so he played trumpet before he went on. I just did a couple of big blasts of trumpet, and then
nice.
And then we started our set. It was kind of fun.
There you go. You and like Big Blood, they have their kid in their band too.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Well, remember
or
Monster Dudes?
Monster Dudes,
Boise,
Evil Wicked Warrior.
Oh,
John Benson's band with his daughter.
Okay.
Did you ever see that band?
No. I loved Benson though.
Okay.
He was the wizard.
Yeah.
Other A minor
Still
Forest.
the wizard. Another A minor Forest Connect. Yeah.
I remember we our first
Goes way
tour
back.
we did with Hale Zukas.
Yes.
And,
Rob.
Yes.
And Mark Small on drums.
Sure.
Maybe. I think so.
Yeah.
I think Mark Small was always in Hell's Lucas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great band.
Yeah, they were awesome. But it was fun. But yeah,
the Jambulance. Was Randy Lee on that trip?
No.
You remember Randy Lee? Okay, remember Randy Lee.
No, I don't think so. Was he friends with Rob?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He I think that's another podcast.
Story.
That's a whole that's a multi-hyphenate. Someone's got to do a podcast with Randy Lee Sutherland though. There's gonna be some good stories there. He's full of stories.
Oh my god, awesome.
But Randy, this is fun.
This is super fun. Yeah, I know. We could do this. We could do this all day.
Randy's.
All the Randys. That's the other stand-up show we'll do.
Part 2, guys. If you like this,
tune into all the
get
Randys.
at us an X. Tell us. Yeah, we'll do another one.
Yeah,
we'll do more.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure to catch.
We'll do every show we were at together. Recap.
Oh my god! Right. Well, I had this idea of doing a No Age podcast where I just went show by show and tried to see what I could remember about each show, and have guests on who have bands we played with at those shows, or promoters, or somebody else that could tell me, because I don't think I remember the first 300 shows. You know what I mean?
I remember a lot of them.
Okay.
I remember a lot of them. I have a very distinct one though that I think you will remember, which is when you guys were in London.
Okay. Yep.
And you did the Bear.
Oh yeah, at the ICA.
Because I'd never seen the Bear before.
Oh god, how psychedelic is that? Right? It was amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, we only did that a number of
I'd
times.
never seen the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a fun one.
That was super fun. Yeah, no, I mean,
we played in London together. Well, I didn't.
We did that fest,
I don't know if we
Upset the Rhythm
on
Fest.
Yeah, that's right. And then the first time I ever went to England, I think you guys were there too, because you guys and Mickey Miko were there.
That sounds right. Yeah, 2007.
And we all just crammed into like Tipton's old apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Tipton, shout out, Upset the Rhythm.
I
learned so much in this short period of time of like 3 years. I think I did all my touring in like 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I'm done.
Learned enough to be like, I'm not doing this anymore. Get out of it.
Kind of like all my bands broke up, basically, as part of it. Yeah.
Well, if we're going down this whole, do you still have that SG? Remember you let me borrow the SG and I got it fixed? That's a beautiful guitar.
I do. It's in my closet right now. That's right.
Yes.
I broke it because I kept throwing it around, and then you so kindly fixed it for me with some luthier down here.
Yeah, but on the condition that I could borrow it. Like, here, let me borrow your broken guitar. I'll get it fixed and play it until I see you again, and then I'll give it back to you. Oh, it was kind of a rental.
If you want to borrow it again, you're welcome. It kind of is buzzy frets.
Perfect.
And
I could get it fixed.
The last It's my only guitar now.
Amazing.
It's my only guitar I have. I haven't not picked it up in a while.
That's incredible. Well, it was some kind of not even early 70s, right? Maybe even late 60s.
It only has one pickup on it. Yeah.
Or it only had the one P90, or did it used to have two?
It has like this weird. It has like some marks that there used to be like a further bridge or something on it, but like it's very light.
Yes.
That's what I liked about it. All the weight is in the neck.
Yep.
That was the funny thing
the neck
about
dive.
the guitar.
Yeah. That's great.
But classic SG shape.
Yep.
Yeah, I still got it.
Cool. Well, don't ever get if
Not
you
doing anything
if you
with
ever want to
it.
get rid of it, let me know. I will always I'll keep it in the family if you're ever trying to get rid of it.
We are. That's good. I'll know where it is. I'll come to Sunland. Well, you can borrow it anytime you want.
There we go. Okay, maybe we'll do a long bar. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
long bar
I can make a record. I can make a record with it and credit you for it.
I'm a producer
there
on that
it is.
record.
There it is.
Now,
Yeah. You get producer points.
Another Discogs mark for me.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I appreciate it. And
I'll
Thanks,
see
Randy.
you
soon. Okay. Bye. There he is, George Chen. Thank you for that, George. I appreciate it. Everybody go out there, buy yourself some Zum records, listen to some Zum records, and go see George live. His stand-up comedy is hilarious. Stand-up is a funny one, right? I always feel like anytime I've gone to a stand-up comedy show, I'm always impressed and almost like I'm nervous for the performer or some kind of like relieved. I don't know if that's just me or if that just happens, when you go see people, but not even people, but when you know the person, it becomes like an even more thing. Oh God, he's just going to stand there and talk. Okay, what's going to happen? And then I'm laughing and I feel like, oh, of course, they're professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. And it's like I'm almost more, there's like a relief kind of by the end, like, wow, nothing terrible happened. Wasn't that fantastic? And I was so entertained and I stopped being nervous for them. I don't know, does that ever happen to you? I don't feel that way about musicians though. They should probably, right? They're probably just as nervous and probably could fuck up way more or maybe the same amount. I don't know. Maybe stand-up comedians can cover it better. That'd be interesting. I feel like there's more to explore here on the stand-up versus musician or stand-up and musician. So George rules. Go find him everywhere and follow him and tell him I said hello. Tell him I sent you. And I will be back here next week with Aaron Farley to discuss all things George Chen. I appreciate it. Thank you. See you soon. Bye.